Insurance isn't one size fits all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy, or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life, on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
So welcome everybody to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. This is our American history 250th anniversary of signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th. Super special episode. I mean, for people who don't know, I am a Canadian person. So when we're getting into the weeds of American politics, like I need to bring in an expert. And by expert, I mean just like anyone who's American. And that's who's here with me today. It's Meredith Constant.
Hello, the bar is so low. You're like, just any American will do.
Well, because we had been talking about we wanted to record together and you mentioned an interest in American history. And I was like, I need somebody with that. Please.
What if I just start breaking down, this is a Christian nation founded, what if it's all my knowledge is just kind of right-wing revisionist history of America? I'm just kidding. It's not.
We're going to get into a lot of that because who we're talking about is Abigail Adams, who is kind of, if you know the play, she's kind of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the American Revolution because she was there watching it, but she was not of it. So we learned from her a lot of things that happened. And I will say, so I read a book that's called The Unexpected Abigail Adams, A Woman Not Apt to be Intimidated by John L. Smith Jr. And it, as I was just telling Meredith before we recorded, John L. Smith Jr. makes some assumptions about what his readers know and don't know about American history. So there are some gaps that you can help fill in for me. But I did learn a lot about the founding of America. And I'm like, this bitch was right there. She was right there. Like all the things that happened, it's like Boston Tea Party. She's like, oh, I'm in Boston. Like, she's right there.
She took her son to go watch. He's like, can we go watch the battle at Bunker Hill? And they're just watching the bloodiest war, I believe, or battle between the British on, at least in Massachusetts, in the colony, or perhaps in any of the 13 colonies, that happened. And she's just like watching, it's like popcorn. We're going to see a movie. There are people being bayoneted.
I think she lived in a time of such death, such persistent death. You're just so immune to it because she lived, well, she was not. She got every disease, but we'll talk about that. She was an unlucky person living in colonial America, like in Boston, which everybody is just all crowded around each other. And like the number, I didn't record all of them, but it's just like, we've got typhus, we've got dysentery, we've got smallpox, we've got like everything. And she was an ill person. Let's set the scene though of like where she was born, etc.
And actually, sorry, I was going to add something about the vaccines, but unless you want to wait.
We're going to get into the vaccines.
Okay, perfect.
Because I have some thoughts about that, which is actually, we'll say this right now, because so we don't forget. My thoughts are, having read in this biography about how much George Washington, John Adams, everybody was just like, get your smallpox vaccine, get your vaccine. They're all so pro-vaccine. I was like, why didn't you put that in the document? The document that says like, everyone can have a gun and whatever. Like it should be like, everyone can have a gun and everyone has to get vaccines. Like, they should have written it down. They were so pro-vaccine.
That's like the wokest thing. She was pro-vax, like you could see the protest now because she did get her children inoculated. And that was at a time where John was off doing his independent stuff. They spent a lot of time in a long distance relationship, and she had to make the decision and get the kids inoculated, which was pretty revolutionary, not a pun, for the time.
It was still very new. And I think, I don't recall exactly, but I do know I mentioned all the persistent death of this story. But she saw so many people die of smallpox. I feel like some of her siblings. So when she was like, oh, there's a thing you can do to prevent this, like, bet, like, we're on it. We're getting this done. But George Washington, I want to say he's like the guy. He's like the founding god of your country. And he got all his troops vaccinated. They were all into it. Like, why didn't they put it in the document? That document that's like, people are like, what would our founding fathers do if they were around today? I'm like, they would get vaccinated.
They would be vaccinated and they would be like, what the hell is an AR-15? We didn't think about this part. It's supposed to be a living document. It is so frustrating the way that, yes, the Bill of Rights are protected and the first 10 are so important because of what they provide Americans in theory when they're being enforced correctly and interpreted correctly. But the strict constitutionalists, boy, they drive me nuts.
It's interesting. It was when I was doing a podcast, I feel like it was maybe the Thomas Jefferson one, that I was just like really learning about American revolutionary history for the first time. And I was like, what? Why do we see them as like such godlike, all-knowing figures? And that kind of developed later. Like when they founded America, everyone wasn't just like, yes, you are perfect people. It's more like, I feel like 1800s, 1900s, that Americans were just kind of like, we need to make these people seem like saints, and everything they did was perfect.
And I think a big part of that is almost this desire to always have some sort of divine rule. Even if we're, overthrowing the monarchy, British rule, we still need to hero worship the founding of our nation, because otherwise the whole idea could crumble, which I don't agree with. But even George Washington, when he says, well, I'm not going to obviously run for a third term, we're not having kings anymore. People were like, whoa, what do you mean you're not just going to rule forever? What? Really? It was hard to break that.
That's the interesting part of the story. We'll go chronologically, but like, I thought it was really interesting that when they founded, they're like, what should we call the person in charge? King? And it's like, president. And then they're like, should this be a lifetime appointment? And then your children have it. And they're like, let's think about it. No. What should we call the president? And it's like, should we call the president like your highness, like your excellency? And they landed on like Mr. President. It was funny just to see these things being like discussed.
They're like workshopping it. It's a writer's room, where are we going with this story?
And everything was on the table, frankly. And a lot of what we know is because these guys wrote a lot of documents, but a lot of what we know is Abigail Adams, you were saying she had this kind of long distance relationship with her husband. She wrote, did she sleep? I don't know. So many letters. All she did was write letters to her husband because they were apart for like years. And it's funny, there's parts of her story where I was reading through this biography and they're like, we don't know about a lot of what she thought during this 6-month time because she and John were in the same city. Like, good for them.
Yeah. And this poor woman, tells her husband, you burn those when I die, you burn them. And he said, baby, I'm creating a legacy here. I'm not burning shit. And I have to say, thank you, John Adams, because we know so much more about their relationship. We get a full picture of these people and not just this edited, there were 400 cattle today or, that kind of documentation. We actually get a glimpse into a pretty unique relationship for that time.
I'm so grateful in my podcast whenever I come across something when someone dies and they're like, Carolina Brunswick, she was like, burn my letters. And I'm like, no, like reaching through my time machine, like, please don't. I'm so glad when somebody's letters aren't burned. So we do, I will say, the guy who wrote this biography, like, do I recommend it? If you're a fan, sure. But he has equal interest in like her grain shipment news as like, oh, my arthritis is in my leg. It's a bit bad today as like the actual history. So it's like she wrote everything. And if you're into that, you can read everything. But we're just going to go through the highlights.
Yeah.
And she does my favorite part. I was just like, wow, this woman, okay, like she's running the farm, she's doing all this stuff. I'm like, this is impressive. But like in terms of this podcast, where I prefer to talk about kind of scandalous bitches, I'm like, she's kind of upstanding, but then she gets to England and then she gets real bitchy. But that'll be a fun surprise for you.
She does some stuff where you're like, whoa, this seems potentially illegal. But she said, I got to make my money. I mean, she was so smart.
Yeah.
She had a power of attorney had to be granted when John was overseas, because God forbid a woman, run things. That couldn't be done. And she knew that. So she made sure they had one who basically was just her yes man. And she would just tell him things and be like, this is what we're going to do. Yeah, I got it. And he was like, yes, ma'am. It's a yes, ma'am, not a yes, man. So it was just brilliant.
She's like, it's interesting. So when I asked on Threads the other day, because I was just like, having this conversation, a lot of Americans are listening to this. I'm just like, what do we know about her? What do we think about her? And she's one of these sort of like not taught in school type people. So people who know about her, I think, sought this out. But people like you who know about her are just like, oh, she's one of the good ones. Like of the women of this era. Like
I would say what we mostly learn about in American history in schools is that she is one of the few people who can say that they were first lady and mother to a president. Barbara Bush is another one. And the other thing that is big about her is her Remember the Ladies letter that she writes to Thomas Jefferson. And that's sort of the main, because obviously history is written by the victors and the white European men. So it's usually like you got a box, a little highlighted box on the side of your American history book that was like, and there's a lady here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like, here's a marginalized person. And that's what you got. And then it's like back to the white men, though.
Yeah. So that was what people said also. It's kind of like, what do you know about Abigail Adams? I asked. And people are like, remember the ladies. She was cool. Not as bad as Martha Washington. People brought up some of the stuff with like abolition and slavery, which we'll talk about. On the sliding scale of like, well, she was of her time. It's like, she was not my mortal enemy, Martha Washington, who I did a whole episode about. Do you know the story of Ona Judge, the like enslaved woman who ran away from the Washingtons? And Martha Washington, like unrelentingly for like a decade, was like, we're going to get her back. It's like,
I briefly remember this because I actually spent time in the curator's office at the Washington National Park in New Jersey, where I was a summer intern, and I had to go through this lady's letters. And first of all, real hard to read. You could have been thinking about, 2009 Meredith, but I had to go through a lot of her. And I think I either saw a lock of her hair or Abigail Adams' hair, and I cannot remember which. And I remember being like, kind of weird, but cool.
Yeah. I like seeing locks of hair in terms of like, I saw there was the Marie Antoinette exhibit at the V&A a couple months ago. And one of the things that was there was this like small sort of locket. And it was like a braid of Marie Antoinette's hair and like her son's hair. And I'm like, she was a person. Wow. Like it's something that makes somebody tangible.
Yes, actually, that's a good point. I take everything back. I think it was a long day in the curator's office. And I said, I don't want to see hair right now. I want to get through this freaking letter and transcribe it, which really just feels like busy work.
Yeah. I mean, thank God there's so many American history superfans who went through Abigail Adams' 1 gazillion letters and transcribed them.
Mm-hmm. Because she was not a good speller. She had more of a classical history than most women. She was very smart. That woman could not spell. And you know what? Relatable.
She made up spellings. It's so fun. She wrote Ben Franklin. She always wrote Franklings, Ben Franklings. And
Perfect.
I'm like, is that just her cute name for him? Or is that how she thinks it's spelled? I don't know, but I like it. Ben Franklings.
Me too. It's cute.
It is cute. So she is a Massachusetts girly. She's born in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Are you familiar with this place?
I am actually. My family came through to America through Boston and lives on Cape Cod. So Weymouth I'm actually just looking this up to make sure I don't get it wrong because God forbid, really quickly.
It does look like her birthplace is like a little building you can visit.
Oh, that's cute.
Something else that I learned about her and John Adams is like, in terms of Boston, it's like George Washington might as well not exist. Just the Adams.
There was actually a whole thing that, oh no, I have the wrong Adams. But John Adams is pretty big around there. So basically she grew up southeast of Boston, kind of near Quincy and also Hingham. And so she is in that area of Boston or
I want to
south of
mention
Boston.
Quincy, named after her mother's maiden
Yes.
name, Quincy. So she's connected to this like historical family
It's
that's been in this
everywhere.
area.
Actually, the big thing about the college I went to in Boston is that when you turned 21, you would go to this little dive bar pub that was right on the same street, and you would have a Sam Adams across the street from where Sam Adams was buried. I mean, it's cool. It's an old graveyard in Boston Commons.
Yeah. So this is like, she's, as far as anyone in America has like roots going back, like she's tracing it back to like the Mayflower, basically. There's a place called Quincy. Like that's actually, and there's also a place called Braintree.
Yeah.
Fun name.
It's the last stop on the green or the red line. Braintree. There's a little mall there.
And that's where they lived for a while. And I was just like, that's a fun name. So what's interesting about this story is like she marries John Adams. But so she's growing up and her family is like in terms of American Revolutionary times, and I've done a few episodes about this, like fairly chill. Like, okay, they're like, girls can be educated too at home. Like, not everybody thought that.
No, they did not.
So her dad was a preacher, and it says here he did not focus his preaching on predestination or original sin, but instead he emphasized the importance of reason and morality. So even in terms of growing up in a religious household, it's not just like, y'all going to hell. It's more just
it's some Calvinist shit. I mean, It's some Calvinist stuff.
So she is like, in terms of growing up, and I think this sets the scene for like, she becomes kind of like a rational sort of like, nerd type woman. And she's frequently sick as a child. So she's free. I mentioned like Boston, well, and she's just outside of Boston, but like everyone's getting sick because it's like the colonial America. And you've got like so many people squished in these little tiny areas. And just throughout her life, she's sick a lot. And this is something I do want to bring up because it affects her life throughout. And I think like a lot of women in history, women with chronic illness, it's kind of like, well, she had some symptoms, but anyway, what was he doing? It's like, she had rheumatoid arthritis and she was like going on an 8-week sea voyage. Like, she's not a comfortable person.
No.
She's like often she's getting flares from that. But I think it's because, when you're sick as a kid, sometimes that can trigger like autoimmune diseases. And like, anyway, she got everything. She was a sickly little kid. So many kids died in colonial America, but she did not. She just lived on with symptoms of literally every disease. And so, although she did not receive a formal education, her mother taught her and her sisters to read and write. And she did learn, this is interesting, she learned French. She could read and write in French. But then when she went to France, she was like me, a Canadian who grew up Anglophone. The first time I went to Montreal, I was just like, oui, yes. I took French class. And then I'm just like, oh no, I don't understand spoken French. All I can do is write essays and conjugate verbs. Yeah. So she like got to France and she's like, oh fuck, I don't actually know French. All I can do is read it. But she did learn French. But this little girl, she never would have thought she's going to be living this international life, going to Europe, etc. So this is all pre-American Revolution, obviously, because she's an adult and a married woman when that happens. So she meets John Adams. Do you know about their first meeting?
They're meet cute.
It's not.
It's not a meet cute. You know what? I don't know how they met.
So they met because his friend was like courting her sister. And she was sort of there as probably like a chaperone. And so as a girl, so she's Abigail, and her nickname as a child was Nabby, like Nabigail. And John Adams met like her sister. It's like, oh, Lizzie and Nabby are both. He like was just sort of like, oh, she's the annoying little sister of this like person who my friend is courting. And he like didn't give her a second thought.
Kind of like Prince Charles when he courts Diana's older sister. And then Diana's kind of around and he's like, oh, yeah, you. That
kid. So he had no thoughts about her because she's not a beauty. She's like a cool person, but no one ever was just like, oh my gosh. So, but it took a while. So he kind of knew the family, like he hung out with them. And she was also like 15. So like, yeah, she's a little kid. But with time, he realizes like, oh, she's actually funny. Like this, she gets it. She's like smart. And like, this is the kind of wife I need in colonial America. Somebody who could like do shit.
Which is wild that he felt that way. And I think it's a Jane Austen quote that's something like, sensible men don't marry silly women. And I think that really encapsulates John Adams, because Thomas Jefferson was not going to marry a woman like Abigail Adams ever.
Although he did like her a lot, but not as a wife, you know?
No, they never would have worked.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Again, when I was sort of like preparing, I'm like, who is this person? What is her vibe? And I asked my friend Lana, who's also an American, and she said, well, there was a TV miniseries of it, and John and Abigail were played by Paul Giamatti and Laura Linney. So just picture that. I was like, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like reasonable, sensible adults, like no whiff of scandal or sex appeal, or it's just kind of like, here's two grown-ups. Like, okay.
But their letters for like that time, there was some dirty stuff in there. There were like innuendos about like, yeah, I'd show you how much I love you. And you're like, oh, excuse me.
So it's a love match. And you know what? You don't always get that in colonial America, but they like, yeah, it's a sort of friendship where it's like, marry your best friend. Like that's the vibe. Like they respect each other in that way.
Weird.
Like, as people. For this era, like,
very strange.
Yeah. Very unusual. So things are happening. So they get married. She pops out like 4 children pretty quickly, which I'm going to like go over quickly because for somebody with all of her illnesses, like I'm sure it was sort of like fraught having these children, but like she survived, the baby survived. It's like, well, this is unusual. Good luck. And so their first daughter, actually, I mentioned her nickname was Nabby. And then their first daughter is called Abigail. So when she got married, she became, Abigail, like Mrs. Adams. And so that they had a daughter and their first child, they called Abigail. And then she became the new Nabby 2.0. Anyway, so she's having children, but his political career is like taking off. And this is where they're spending a lot of time apart. Like she's pregnant, they're apart. She has a baby, they're apart. Like he comes back into town, like impregnates her, leaves again. Because he's a lawyer, I want to say, but he's like a magistrate. So he's just like got this traveling job. And then he sort of builds up a good reputation just as being like the adult, like the guy who you turn to when you need someone to do a job well. And there's not a lot of people like that, I guess. So
and he's also in some ways incredibly humble. When they are drafting the Declaration of Independence, he says, you know what, TJ, we don't always get along. We're not super close at this point. We will become closer later in life. He should really write this. Jefferson's got away with the quill. This is the guy. It shouldn't be me. Which, pretty humble for a man at any time in history.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the like boring background American political figures, but he's not the JFK. He's not the like Barack Obama. He's the like guy in the back being like, well, I'm just filling out this paperwork correctly. And it's like, you need that guy also.
And I would argue, based on what he had to face and being the second president, which is arguably the hardest transition, I don't know if the democracy today withstanding, I don't know if this experiment lasts much longer if there isn't a second president like John Adams.
Yeah, who just kind of like gets shit done. So to briefly gloss over, the American Revolution happens.
Oh, that old thing?
There's a Congress. They decide like we're going to start a republic, etc. They go to war with Britain, and Abigail Adams is back at home. I feel like she's in Braintree at this point, and she's just like, okay, I'll just raise these kids and run this farm and write you 1,000 letters every day. Oh, I want to mention the courier who brought the letters back and forth to her was Paul Revere. So just like little cameo appearance, literally Paul Revere.
Also, I read that she would ask John, when he was overseas, to send back letters in diplomatic pouches and stuff. And then she would turn around and sort of eBay the diplomatic pouches, which I guess were all the rage, and sell them, which was not legal. But she was always looking for Abigail Adams would not only have been in an MLM, she would have been the top seller of Tupperware. She would have.
And this is the thing, like she needs to do what she can because she's like a woman, running this household, this farm, everything in the absence of her husband, who's off like overseeing sort of like boring paperwork things. But like there's an American Revolution happening. There's like nonstop diseases happening. And she's just like, I got to get my basic income. I got to like get these crops going. Like she's doing it. And
Also, it's like hard to understate the fact that these people that were the fathers of the revolution, every day they were like, is this the day that we are executed? You know, like we are going to die if we are done if this doesn't work. So you're also worried about the very, very, very real possibility of your family being executed.
yeah, no, it's they didn't know that this was going to all work. And it's the sort of thing like a lot of people are living through now, where it's just kind of like, okay, there's like grand political terrifying events happening, but it's like, but I also got to pay my rent and I also need to feed my children. So she's kind of in that space of like, is my husband going to be pulled away and executed? Like and I won't know for 3 weeks because it's olden times and Paul Revere is going to bring me a letter. Like, so she's just getting shit done, and not everybody could. And she did. So good for her.
Good for her.
But eventually what happens is, the revolution side wins.
Spoiler.
Yeah. This is what's being celebrated right now, I guess. Well, I guess no. What's being celebrated right now is 250 years of the Declaration of Independence.
The signing of the Declaration of Independence. I will say, so the Continental Congress officially adopts the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. A month later, it's signed. But that's what we celebrate. And I will say, I saw a very funny thread where someone said, celebrating the 250th anniversary of America this year is sort of like when you're celebrating the anniversary of a couple that you just know is having major issues. And that's fair.
I will say, from what I learned from this book about her is, and / American history, like it was a hot mess from the beginning. Like it was, so if we talk about like he goes to Europe before he becomes president, right?
Yes.
But okay, so when we get to the president part, it's exactly like now. I'm just like, oh, this is like, everybody, like Alexander Hamilton comes in. I will just mention she hated Alexander Hamilton.
Not surprising.
That was her nemesis. She hated A, the British royal family, B, Alexander Hamilton. These were her two nemesis in life. So the American Revolution happens. George Washington becomes president. I'm trying to think what happens in what order. No, because he goes to Europe. He just like goes to Europe. At what point is that?
I think he goes to Europe several times during their marriage.
Yeah, he does. He goes to Europe several times. And this is, again, they're like writing letters back and forth. He gets a job in Paris. Which is so bananas to me during this whole time period, like, because France helped the Americans win the revolution. So they've got like a nice relationship going on. But he went to be the ambassador to Paris in 1784. And it's like, okay, well, that's an interesting time to be in Paris.
Weird timing. And wow, that special relationship does not stay special very long.
So I'm going to read you a quote. Abigail joins him in Paris. And this is where she realizes, like, oh, fuck, my my French not going to cut it, actually. So she wrote this letter to her niece. She says, "You inquire of me how I like Paris. Long before I saw Paris, I have smelt it. It is the dirtiest place I ever saw. The streets are narrow, the shops, the houses inelegant and dirty, the streets full of lumber and stone with which they build." She was just like, this place fucking sucks. So she stopped in London first and she really liked London. And then she went to Paris and she was just like, I should have seen these in reverse.
Yeah.
This is Paris pre-revolution. So anyway, so they're in Paris. And then so she met like Marie Antoinette. She meets like the whole squad who's there in France. And she has to run this gigantic house. Like before she was, capably running a farm with like some servants. I want to mention she did not own enslaved people. Her father did. She grew up with enslaved people. She personally had paid servants. Anyway, but then she gets to Paris and it's a house it took her like a year to see how many rooms there were in the house. It's like 45 rooms or something. It's like
somewhere Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is like, that's positively a dump. How can one live in so little rooms?
So while she was in France, though, and I love this for her, she she discovered that she really likes theater and opera, like things there's not in colonial America. And so and at first she's just like, oh my gosh, like she goes to the theater and she's like, these people, they're like semi-dressed. And she's just like, ooh, like colonial American, like quasi-Puritan.
Yeah.
But she gets used to it, and good for her. She's just like, okay, this is an art form. This is called ballet. Like they wear tights and I'm used to it now. But at first she's just like, what is happening? Like
she's the person that comes back from Paris wearing a beret and is like,
yes.
I can only go buy it's just not the same. I can only go buy fresh bread now. I mean, how could you just go to the store? Like I have to go to a boulangerie. You know, she's that person.
Exactly. Like she went there at first, she's just like, it smells, don't care for this. And then she's just like, actually, this is great. And it's fabulous. And look at my baguette that I have.
Yeah, exactly.
She became friends with Lafayette's wife, Adrienne. So we've got another like cameo of tangential cameo of somebody who's in Hamilton. Adrienne, not in Hamilton, but Lafayette. So she's meeting all the like movers and shakers. She loves theater. She's having a nice time. And then she meets Marie Antoinette. I think I mentioned that, but just like briefly and stuff. And then he gets a job as the first U.S. minister to the court of St. James in Britain. So this is like the American Revolution is over. And I think this is quite a thing to be like, okay, we're our own country. And now we're going to have like a representative in Britain, the country that we just excised ourselves from.
Awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because she went to Paris and she's just like, oh, this place smells. I don't like it. But then she was won over. And then she went to London. She's like, oh, it's not as good as Paris. Like, it's inconsistent, but also like relatable, I think. Oh, I want to mention too, she was a bird mom. She loved birds. Did you know about this?
I didn't know that. I knew she was a difficult mother though to human children. I don't know if she's like full mommy dearest, but oh
my gosh. Oh, she is. So this is one of the reasons in terms of her human children. So Nabby, her daughter, and what her daughter is like, she's like, why isn't she a nerd like me? Why isn't she reading more books? And her daughter's like, I'm a boy crazy Lydia Bennet type, and that's who I am. And she has a boyfriend, and her mother's like, you have a boyfriend? I'm going to take you with me to Europe to break up this relationship. And then later her son, John Quincy Adams, has a relationship, and she like breaks that relationship up because she doesn't like the woman. Like, yeah.
And then he goes to Europe and quickly marries someone so that his mother can't stop it. And then this poor woman has to deal with the aggression of her mother-in-law, which, my God, that poor woman. I think her name might have been Lydia. I don't remember.
I feel like it's Louisa.
Or maybe it's Louisa. Lydia did not sound right. I think it's Louisa. I think you're right.
And now for a quick advertising break. Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Welcome to the realms of peril and glory. Explore the mechanically magical vistas of Vale, the paranormal mysteries of liminal London, and the cyberpunk chaos of Cyborg. Be awed by our incredible guests from familiar shows like Oxventure and No Rolls Barred. Search Realms of Peril and Glory to find out more.
And we're back. So when she's in France, she finds a bird. She gets a pet bird. And the bird would serve as a pet and friend to her. She wrote, "I have bought a little bird lately, and I really think I feel more attached to that than to any object out of my own family."
Okay. Yep.
So she loves the bird. She loves the bird. She also loved dogs. And then when they were moving from France to England, she's like, "Well, I have to bring my bird with me." But the bird freaked out and would not, go in the carriage or whatever. And she's just like, "Oh my God, I have to leave my bird behind."
She's like, the kids can stay. We got to take the bird.
Got to get the bird. But then she got another bird. Somebody was like, "Well, here's a bird that's used to travel." So then she got a new bird. So
I love that.
I do and then when she eventually gets back to America, she's doing like bird watching and stuff. You know how so many people these days are into like birding? She's kind of the patron saint of just like nerdy middle-aged people who like birds.
Yes.
This is who she is. Yeah. So I'm just looking at this.
That's okay.
So she's talking about trying to take the bird. "My little bird, I was obliged after taking it into the carriage to resign to my Parisian chambermaid, or the poor thing would have fluttered itself to death. I mourned its loss, but its place was happily supplied by a present of 2 others." So don't worry, she's got birds. She's keeping up with her birding hobby.
I love that.
So they go over to England, and this is where we get into some. So just to recount, the America broke off from Britain to be like, "Screw you, we don't want a king, we're doing our own thing, fuck the monarchy."
Taxation's the real issue here too.
But for her to then go over to England, and it's like, okay, well, now you need to go and meet the king and queen, and you have to dress like this, and here's how you have to bow and curtsy, and it's like, excuse me? The thing that we just
what?
But also, you're right, the awkwardness of just being the American representatives to go and meet the king and queen after fighting a war against them.
It's sort of like being the bridesmaid in your ex-husband's wedding or something. It's a little too close. The wound is still very much open.
Very recent. This is the American Revolution just ended, and they're like, okay, we'll go and meet the king and queen at this levee. And so the king and queen at this point, it's Queen Charlotte, it's George III. And so here's one of the letters that I'm sure Abigail was like, burn this letter later, please. But her friend did not. So this is her description of meeting the royal family. So she wrote, "I attended the drawing room last week upon the anniversary of the coronation of their majesties. The company were very brilliant, and her majesty was stiff with diamonds. The 3 eldest princesses and the Prince of Wales were present. The king looked much better than when I saw him before. He is a stout, well-made man, and would look very well if he had not sacrificed so much to Bacchus." This man looks like a drunk, is what she said.
Damn.
"The Princess Elizabeth I never saw before. She's about 15, a short, clumsy miss, and would not be thought handsome if she was not a princess."
Oh my God. She said, "Nepo baby."
"The whole family have one complexion, and all inclined to corpulent. Notwithstanding the English boast so much of their beauties, I do not think they really have so much of it. Amongst the most celebrated of their beauties stands the Duchess of Devonshire, who is masculine in her appearance."
She's saying inbred. Just kidding.
It's just
kind of.
She's just dissing Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, the ancestress of Princess Diana, the most glamorous woman. She's just these bitches are fat.
They're not that hot. They're not. No, she's doing the Clueless. It's a total Monet. You get up close. It's just a mess.
They dress well, but it's interesting. This is it reminds me of Jane Austen has letters or diaries where she just really goes in on people. But like, it was just private letters for people to read. And now they're public and we're like, oh, Jane Austen. Anyway.
Girl, that was mean, but
So I like this
it's
take.
a funny clap back now.
It's just funny to me that she's just like, well, these fat uggos, the British royal family, no thanks.
These trolls.
But it's, like if they weren't the prince and princess, it's like, yeah, they are just normal people, actually. They're not the most glamorous people in the world, nor has the British royal family ever been the most glamorous people in the world, I say.
I would not disagree. There are more glammy monarchies out there. There just are.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think people wrote like the same about Marie Antoinette sometimes, where they're like, oh, like she's actually just like a normal looking person. Like, yeah, she was. And she was the queen. And not everyone's going to be like, whatever, Princess Diana. So they're in England. There's another quote I would need to find you, because she went to, so theater. She's just like, hell yeah, I'm a theater girly now. I like birds. I like theater. This is what I do. And so she also has, so she goes to see a production of Othello in 1785. And the role of Desdemona, I just want to mention, was played by Sarah Siddons, who's like the actress of the time.
Oh.
And the portrayal of Othello who is a Black character, was portrayed by a man in blackface. Because it's oldie times.
Yeah.
And she was just like she's questioning her own thoughts, but what she says is basically she just felt uncomfortable seeing a Black man romantically involved with a white woman. She was just like, this play makes me uncomfortable. I lost much of the pleasure of the play from the sooty appearance of the Moor, which you could be like, do you mean just like the bad blackface makeup? Is that what you mean? But then she wrote, she was uneasy with the aspect of the two characters of different races touching each other. She found this. She was uncomfortable with this.
She is, unfortunately, she's a woman of her time. It would have been crazy if she had said something like, oh, I'm so glad they're finally representing a diverse relationship out here that really represents what the world is like right now, because it was not like that.
Yeah, fair. So this is like, and she was against the slave trade. Like, she was pro-abolition. We know from her letters, like that's the side of things that she was on. And it is interesting, like in terms of, because we get to know like her innermost thoughts from all these letters. And so she was confused by her own prejudice. She was like, I should be chill with this, but I'm not. Why am I not? So she was at least like doing the mental work to consider this. And then also there's a really great quote I need to find. Yes. So she went to another thing at the palace and with her daughter Nabby, and she was just like, everyone here is drunk and on laudanum and like messy bitches, and like all they're doing is gambling, and like this is a bit much. But there's a really good quote. Sorry, I just need to find it because
that's okay.
It's iconic. Yeah. So Prinny, who readers of my book, Rebel of the Regency, will know as George, Prince of Wales. Hot mess of a man. Actually, no, mess of a man, not hot.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's like 20, 21 at this point. And so he arrives at the ball extremely drunk. And here's how she describes his entry. A little before 9, the prince came staggering in. He chatted with the ladies who were to dance. At the third dance, the prince somehow, I don't know how, had a fall. And the first that we saw was he laid flat on his back.
Oh, God.
So Prinny just like stumbles and drunk and then just like flops around and suddenly he's just like flat on his back. Classic Prinny.
Classic. Oh my God. I mean, if there ever was a situation where you said, you know what, it's a good thing we got rid of this monarchy. It's not it.
Yeah. Honestly, everything that she's seeing in England, she's just like, yeah, don't regret this.
Yep, that's why we're not doing this anymore.
I'm glad these people are not in charge of us anymore. But yeah, so she's third England. And then, so while they're in England, 1787, she is so Thomas Jefferson, who's like kind of her friend, he likes her a lot, platonically. Anyway, he's sending over for his younger daughter to join him in France. And the younger daughter comes over with a chaperone, and that chaperone is teenaged Sally Hemings.
Okay.
On the way to Paris, they stop in London and they stay with Abigail Adams. So she meets like Polly, the daughter, and she meets Sally Hemings before Sally Hemings is involved with Thomas Jefferson. So she meets them and she is kind of like, okay, you're going to France. Like, you're going to need some better dresses. Let's make over montage for both of you.
Ooh.
So she gets them all ready to go to Paris. She just wrote like, oh, Polly, she's so cute. Like, and this is the sort of situation where Thomas Jefferson had been in Paris for so long, like his daughter doesn't really know him and had also never left home. So Polly's like struggling. And Abigail Adams is like, okay, like she's reassuring to her. So she's nice to birds. She's nice to the children of strangers.
Other people's children, yes. Her own children, absolutely not. You very high standards.
Yeah, she only really cares about her own children when they're getting married to somebody who she doesn't like. Eventually they leave London, much to her dismay, because she came to like it too. It's honestly relatable. Like, you go to a place, you don't like it here. Like, especially if you move because your family moves and you didn't choose to. But then she gets used to it. Like, it feels like home. Eventually, they come back to America because he is the vice president and he needs to do his job.
Yeah.
And I like this rule. When I first read this past American rule, I thought it was very interesting that it used to be whoever got the most votes is president. There's not parties yet. And whoever gets second most votes is vice president.
Yeah. And it's so funny because that happens under John Adams, whose vice president is Thomas Jefferson. And their parties have formed. There's a Federalist Party and a Democratic Republican Party. And I'm pretty sure when Thomas Jefferson wins, he's like, that's a stupid rule. I'm going to pick my own vice president. Why would you do that? Screw bipartisanship.
Well, and it's like, of course it didn't work. So when he was, I think the timing of this, I don't remember exactly, but he was vice president. And it was kind of like, this is the first time there's ever been a president, the first time there's been a vice president. And he wrote in his letters to her, he's like, this job is bullshit. There's nothing to do. This is a fake job. And at this point, the capital was in New York City. And so they had to they weren't provided a house. They had to find a rental. And it was really hard to find a rental. And they're just like, I don't want to live here. This job is stupid.
They're like, Zillow is not providing. It's ridiculous. And then the worst part is they're like, okay, you become president and you get to live in the president's house, later the White House, for the first time ever. But it's a construction zone. It's disgusting. Enjoy.
It was described as, it's the best quote. It was like, she had to take a carriage to the malaria-ridden swamp town of Washington.
Disgusting.
I was like, okay, get me a t-shirt that says Washington, D.C., malaria-ridden swamp town.
Yeah.
And she is so prone to illness. This is not a good climate.
Not conducive.
This is triggering. She's got rheumatoid arthritis in an era where there's not. The only pain medication you have is laudanum. Let's give you some more opium. Okay. So she has to go on these long carriage rides, and then they got lost on their way to Washington. They got lost in the woods outside of Baltimore because they didn't know where they're going because it's not a city. They're just
we really needed better signage. Rough time.
So they're going to Washington, D.C., and she is, unlike Martha Washington was just fuck this, fuck New England, where I want to be in the South. Where are my 500 enslaved people? Fuck everything. Abigail is like, okay, we'll make it work. We'll live in Washington. We'll live in this swamp town. Okay. And so she's Martha Washington served as the first lady. Abigail Adams is the next first lady. And so it's there's an expectation of what's she going to do? What's she going to be like? And she's first lady / chief of staff. She's not just hosting parties. The reason why she went to be there, she would have gone there eventually, but John Adams was without her for a couple months and he's just I don't know what to do. I need Abigail. She's always been his brainstorming partner.
It's very Hillary and Bill.
Yeah.
I think at the time, Abigail Adams by critics is called Mrs. President. It is very, why is Hillary working on childcare? But what a lot of people either don't know or don't remember is that John Adams basically decides, because they don't know what to do with this cabinet of Washington's. He's in the same party as Washington. These are Washington's people. Do I fire them? I'm just going to bring them all with me. And there were people who were not a fan of John Adams, and it was just not the best cabinet to turn to for advice. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to turn to my wife. I trust her, and she's super smart.
And this is part of what I think, again, when I was asking, like, what do people know about Abigail Adams? People knew that she was sort of like his helper. Like, she was known to be, he would turn to her and be like, babe, what do I do? Like, this is what's happening. Like, and we know so much about the relationship because they were apart so often. There's so many letters. And she's always like, here's what you do. And like,
yeah, unfortunately, she is the backer of some of the least popular acts that John Adams signs that kind of is probably the reason he's a one-term president.
Yeah. Well, I've got some other reasons he's a one-term president, and that reason is Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
So, as in the musical, Hamilton. So, the like tabloids and the sending stories back and forth, and just like, it's so at this point, if you're the candidate to be president, you're not allowed to campaign. If you're running for president, you just have to like go back to Braintree and just like run your farm, and like other people sort of do that on your behalf, which is interesting, fascinating. Imagine that. Imagine trying to enforce that rule now. Like the candidate can't campaign themselves. But so Alexander Hamilton hates John Adams. Not sure why. Do you know why? He's just a hater.
Well, they're definitely, John Adams is way more of a, let's work together, even with Thomas Jefferson, who he has some disagreements with, much more we should all work together above party. And Alexander Hamilton is a little more wily, a little more rascally. I don't know exactly what John Adams thought about Hamilton's plan for a federal bank or for this national bank. I don't know the full story there, but just the little bit, what we know of their personalities and maybe their ways of going about politics, I could see Alexander Hamilton kind of seeing John Adams as like, ugh, this whatever, spineless man.
John Adams, the vibe he gives me, a Canadian, is our current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who so many people, myself included, are just like, oh, this guy's an adult. He can handle himself. You can give him a report and he's going to read it and send it back with like intelligent notes. It's just like, oh, a grown up. And it's just kind of a relief. And I feel like John Adams is bringing that vibe of just kind of like, okay, like you can give him this form to fill out and he'll fill it out appropriately in a timely manner. And that's not exciting. And that's not revolutionary. But like you said, it's maybe what you need for your president number 2.
Yeah, I agree. Alexander Hamilton would have blown us up. Yeah, they had very opposing views of the future of the country. John Adams is that more pragmatic. He's reading the documents, and he's not going to just throw us into war with France because of partially the neutrality, Washington's farewell address about neutrality, and also the fact that the weird thing about the French Revolution and stuff is technically, America sort of signed an agreement and worked with the French king. And so kind of part of the argument is it's kind of null and void because the group that's asking for our help has beheaded the king. And
because he was the president during the French Revolution, and they were kind of like, can you help us? And he was like, no. Actually,
I don't really know if it's transferable. I don't know if you're grandfathered in. And also, my boo Washington was really not about getting involved in international entanglements. So thanks for your help, though, in the revolution. Which also, France wasn't just doing that out of the kindness of their heart. They hated the British.
To defeat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They did that.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, let's take them down.
But what happens with this? So it's interesting, though. So just to recap what I learned. Is that so Washington was president for 2 terms. And at that point, they're like, should this be a permanent thing? Should we call you emperor? Like, what's the vibe? And Washington's just like, fuck, like my wife wants me to go back to the South. I'm super sick. I didn't want to be president to begin with. Get me out of here. And so that's kind of where you have the 2-term limit comes in, but he could have stayed. And then John Adams comes in. So there's this battle to be the next president. And this is where Alexander Hamilton comes in. And it's like, it was informative for me to see like exactly like today. Like if there was Twitter formerly, or like X formerly known as Twitter, it's like if there was Reddit, it's just like if you can pay bots, like that's what they were doing in this electoral campaign to see who would be the president. Like people are spreading rumors like Thomas Jefferson, his mother was actually like she wasn't white, and like rumors about like him and Sally Hemings. But then I'm like, well, what rumor can you even say about John Adams? It's just like, he's boring. But they came up with some shit. Like they were just exactly the same as now. I was like, wow, so America has always been like this. The elections have always been like a dirty business.
Never been above it. And part of the reason why Abigail Adams supports the Alien and Sedition Act, which is seen obviously as an attack on free speech and also immigration, is because she saw it as a way to stop these attacks on her husband, which were untrue and uncalled for, and wanted to see that stopped, which was part and kind of a violation of also the First Amendment in free speech, which is pretty important. But that's one of the reasons that she does support these acts and encourages him down that path, which is very unpopular, is because of what she's seeing about her family in the press.
And also, like, she's like, again, like consistent, like she's ill all the time. This is a stressful life. Like that's going to be triggering her rheumatoid arthritis. And like, she has like malaria. Like she is not a well woman. But John Adams also has various symptoms. And we know this from their letters back and forth. Like this is a stressful life. They're kind of older in terms of
he becomes
people
president in his, I think he's 65 or something. He lives till almost, he's either 90 or around there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of old to become president.
And so both of them are just kind of like, he does not become a two-term president. And I think they're both kind of like, thank God. Like, let's go back to Braintree and just like chill, because this has not been conducive to either of our health, really. So he's defeated. They retire to Peacefield in Quincy. And then she's just kind of like, she's able to run a household. Like she keeps busy as per ever. One thing that I do want to mention is that her children, you mentioned like John Quincy Adams secretly marries in Europe, comes back with his wife, but like there's grandchildren around. So she's kind of like, I think, helping with their education and stuff. Like so many people, she's like hands-on with the grandchildren in a way she was not with the children.
Yeah.
But this is where she also gets into birds in a bigger way, I think. Like she's just like, loves her birds, loves her bird songs.
She's like a retired man with golf. She just gets into it. Or anyone over the age of 50 with pickleball.
She's just like, she's exactly that. She's exactly, I could picture her living in any time period, living a very similar life. Yeah. So she and Thomas Jefferson, like they had some beef because of the presidential race and stuff. But then after his daughter Polly dies, and that's the one who she like helped out when she was a little girl in England. So then they resume her correspondence. Thomas Jefferson also famous for writing a lot of letters to a lot of people. So she just has various pen pals that she's writing to. I do want to mention this just because it was horrific to me and I need you to know, everyone to know. So her daughter, who's like 47 years old at this time, Nabby, she gets breast cancer. Yeah. Did you know about this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is before the invention of anesthetic. And Nabby gets breast cancer. And so she gets a mastectomy in her breast. Like, this is like, when you think about, people getting their arm amputated on the battlefield or whatever vibes, this is like medically horrifying.
Oh my God. It is hard to conceptualize. I cannot even imagine.
No. And so they gave her, I guess all they had was laudanum, which is like opium mixed with alcohol. So just get her like as high as possible. Then they did the surgery and she like recovers from it.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're washing hands either. Like, I don't think we're doing any of that stuff.
We're not washing tools. We're like, so Nabby survives the surgery. The breast cancer does spread to her other breast. She ends up dying 3 years later. So Abigail is just kind of outliving her own children, which, devastating. And her own illness just gets worse and worse. Eventually, so she catches typhoid fever. And at that point, I think her daughter's dead. One of her children. Somebody wrote a letter being like, she's gotten every disease and she always gets through it. So like, don't worry about mom. She's 74, but she's had every disease. I'm like, no, it's cumulative. Like, she has had every disease and recovered from it. And that's why her body is so weak right now when she got typhoid age 74 in colonial America. Anyway, so she passes away. And actually I thought that she was going to live long enough to see John Quincy Adams become president. But no, he outlives her. John Adams outlives her. So it was 2 weeks shy of her 74th birthday. Her last words were, "Do not grieve, my friend, my dearest friend. I'm ready to go. And John, it will not be long." He died 8 years later. And this is famous. He died the same day as Thomas Jefferson on July 4th.
On July 4th, which is poetic in a way that you couldn't even write that. It is so poetic. And also Abigail Adams, her death is what really reunites and this beautiful friendship that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams end up having, because he writes something after Abigail's death being like, the only thing that can cure anything this horrible, this loss, is just it's time and patience or something like that. And that really kind of it invigorates this friendship again, and they really have a beautiful relationship. Yeah, they become buds.
Yeah, just sort of like, we've been through it, but like no one else has lived the same journey we have. Like no one else understands this, what it's like to be president in this fucked up country. Like
they basically have a men's group of 2.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you see like nowadays-ish, when like George W. Bush gets together with, like with Bill Clinton and like Barack Obama, and they're like, no one else knows what this was like. Like
it's true. It's a very small club, especially when you're like, oh, that one really sucks. That one over there.
No one else understands.
The current one in office.
So two things. So we mentioned a bit about her, the Remember the Women. Can you explain what that is? Because that's like her most famous letter.
Yes. So the Remember the Women is when they are drafting, what the future of this country is going to look like. And Abigail Adams writes to Thomas Jefferson to remember the women when we are drafting this new vision of a country. Hold on. I'm looking up the famous quote because she has one about like men would be. And yeah, it's I'm sorry. It's Remember the Ladies. Is the name of it, not Remember the Women. I just, so really quickly, what she basically says is that without women, all men would just be tyrants and kind of out of control, and that we need women, represented in some way, not in terms of being in office necessarily, but we need women represented in this new nation, establish some laws that favor the just and liberal principles is one of the things that she says to Thomas Jefferson. And I mean, John Adams kind of laughs it off, but it's way more of a serious letter than a silly letter. She was kind of being cute and fun about this, but also, I mean, if we're going to make up the rules of this country, I'm just saying.
Why not? Yeah. So this is, I think, when I was asking, what do people know about her? People remember the ladies, or people are just like, oh, she was sort of like, paved the way for the suffragette movement or whatever. I don't know if she did.
They see her as kind of a proto-feminist, but I think people loop her together with the suffragette movement because it comes, I mean, I think if you're looking for points in history, you could point to this, but she wasn't necessarily calling for voting rights. Yeah.
For women. She wrote I could see that maybe the suffragettes themselves would see this letter and find motivation.
Oh, it would be a great way to co-opt it. That's the reason like some people see her as like a proto-feminist in that way, but of course of her time.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing. It's like she was against like slavery. She was an abolitionist, but she also like with the Othello example, she was just kind of like,
she also benefited from it. I mean, the people that were working in the White House and she benefited from the system,
And the White House was built by enslaved people.
Yeah. Well. So
she's kind of like, it's kind of like her knowledge of French. She's like, theoretically, I oppose this, but in practice, like it's benefiting her in many invisible ways.
I don't know. And you also, again, you have obviously most slaves are in the South because that is where you are growing tobacco and cotton. And it's a little different when you're speaking from your perch of you're northern liberal. Just kidding. But you know what I mean? It's a different position to be in. I'm not saying that it shouldn't, I mean, it should have been abolished, but she's from a different vantage point than some of the other people at the time.
So on these sort of biographical episodes of my podcast, I didn't give you a heads up about this, but I feel like you'll figure it out real quickly. We have 4 categories. We're going to score her in 4 different areas to give her a numerical score.
Okay.
Abigail Adams. And so it's a possible, like it's from 0 to 10 in each
Mhm.
category. The first category is scandaliciousness. How scandalous, which I feel like this is a 0. Maybe a 1.
I put her at a 2 just because she also was involved in speculation with basically like the bonds that were given to veterans that they could recoup. And then people lost faith, they lost value. And so they were sold at really low cost. And John Adams was very uncomfortable with this. She had no moral qualms sweeping in, buying those veterans bonds because she knew they'd eventually appreciate. And so there were some things with money that she was kind of hawkish. There was like some, we weren't perfect, but we weren't scandal ridden either.
Yeah, the scandal I was thinking of is just at first I was like, well, people in England would think she's scandalous because of her involvement in the American Revolution. But she later met the king and queen. So like they got over it. So that's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a good example of just sort of like a 2. I think 2 is fair.
And like the Alien and Sedition Act, but
That wasn't her. I mean, I think people maybe found it scandalous that she was advising her husband, and people are like, women shouldn't do that. But I do think she was like a wife and mother, and like there's no. Even when Alexander Hamilton and people were being like, John Adams is a trashy bitch, like they're never like nothing ever against her. Like she was impeachable.
Yeah.
Scheminess is the next category. Just how clever is she coming up with a plan? I think just her overall running the farm, like the bonds, like I think she was like always being like, how am I gonna thrive in this insane world I live in?
She's like an 8 or a 9. I mean, she is coming up with ways to survive. And John Adams even looked at her and said, I mean, she's got it. She knows what she's doing. I don't think she's scheming in terms of, I want my husband to become president, because let's be honest, for most of her life, that wasn't even a concept. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't exactly. And when they got power, she wasn't like, haha, now I'm going to exercise this power. She's just like, okay, run this job. Let's do it.
More unpaid labor for Abigail.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like ambition, scheminess. It was just kind of like, how can we make a go of it in this crazy world we live in? But definitely always coming up with a plan. The next category is significance, her significance to overall history.
I mean, I think she's a 9 or a 10. I think that in some ways she becomes a model of what the first lady can look like. Because you have Martha Washington, who's pretty removed. And then you have Abigail Adams, way more involved. And then we really start thinking about, what does the first lady do? Is it just ceremonial? Do we expect her to have platforms? How involved do we want her to be as an unelected married person to the president? So I think she's incredibly significant for the way that she helped shape John Adams's presidency. Because if did not go well, that first transfer of power, we're under some other country rule at this point.
And he would, like, with a different wife, or if he was a single man, like she was so right there with him as a partner, really, like shaping what that presidency was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a 10 is fair, which is interesting because going into this, I was just like, do people know about her? But it's like, what did she actually do? And she's one of the names. Like I, a Canadian, have heard the name, and I haven't heard the name of many other women from this time period.
You basically, like, you learn about different first ladies and stuff. It's like, Mamie Eisenhower loved pink, like that's what you get about her. She decorated in pink, So everyone has a different vibe, but Abigail Adams is the top advisor to her husband, essentially.
Yeah, she actually did stuff. The final category is, I call it the sexism bonus. And this is more like, if there's somebody who accomplished less in life, it's like, how much more could they have done without sexism? I don't know that got in her way especially because she, it was a love match. It's not like she was married off at age 12 to some like old man who she hated. Like she was able to run the farm. Like, I don't know.
On the other hand, it's like, though, if she was a man, like, what would she have done? What could she have done? Mm-hmm. I think she was very good at working within the system still. Like the fact that she needed a power of attorney even though she's the one running the show here. I think she found a way to circumvent, to work seemingly within the system, but not actually. And also, like you said, having a husband like John Adams was a huge difference on what her life looked like. And, you know, I think it says a lot about John Adams, not to give too much credit to the man, but marrying a strong woman with opinions. And he didn't always take her advice, but he always wanted to hear it. And they just went back and forth, and kind of this equal partnership was a really, really big deal. And it's very interesting that I don't know if you have the country, if you have the democracy without that strong woman.
Yeah. So I think I would say I would say like a 5, because it's like it certainly affected her life, but she worked around it and was still able to accomplish quite a bit. So this is 25 total. That
seems pretty good. I can't do math, so.
No, 25 is total. And so I'll give you just some other episodes. Let's see. Someone else who maybe you've heard of who's at a similar level, just so you can.
Okay.
I wasn't sure how high she would score, honestly, because I just kept thinking like, well, she's not scandalous at all. She's going to get like a total score of 3 or something. Queen
and I'm over here like, let me tell you about speculation.
Queen Charlotte is the lowest ever score. She got 1 out of 40.
Wow.
Because she didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Let me see. So I did unusual for the show, but I did an episode on Lafayette, like the man. And he got a 23. So that's where he is on this scale.
Okay, not bad.
I think who you might have heard of. A 25 is certainly respectable. There's a lot of people below. Jane Austen has a 22, for instance.
Okay.
So she's above that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like who would be like really high on especially the scandal side.
On the scandal side, there's people like when we're getting really high, it's like Mary Queen of Scots. It's like people who.
Yeah, that works.
Do you know Anne Lister, the like lesbian diarist from the Regency era? Oh, she's a 36.
Okay. I gotta find out. I gotta go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah. No, so in terms of like people who didn't have their letters burned, Anne Lister, she wrote these like very explicit sex diaries in secret code and then hid them in like behind the bricks in her chimney. And then later her descendants found them and they're like, what's this? And they started translating them. They're like, oh no. And then they hid them again.
And she was dirty.
And then later somebody else found them and translated them. And it's kind of like Abigail Adams, but like with more sex in it. But it's a really interesting thing to see like a person living through various world events and what was their day-to-day life like.
It's kind of like Abigail Adams with more sex would be a great bumper sticker or mug.
Yeah. I think in terms of people who kept their this is why I'm sad when somebody burns their diaries, because it's like the day-to-day minutia really puts together a picture of like what life was really like.
I agree. So when I was a senior in high school for our AP history class, which is like the college accredited like high school courses. Anyway, we had to keep a journal all year, a scrapbook basically. I don't know why they didn't just have everyone do this. It seemed weird and elitist that only the AP classes had to do this. Yeah. Like, why? Our thoughts weren't more valuable. But anyway, we made these things and I still have mine. And I actually asked a lot of people that I went to high school with, like, do you still have yours? And so many people said, oh, I got rid of that immediately. Or I tried to look at it when I was in college and I was so embarrassed that I got rid of it. Now, I didn't look at mine until over a decade later. And I was like, oh my God, I can't look at this thing. Like, this is going to be so embarrassing. And then I start going through it. And I'm like, I forgot about that. Or, you look at it at a different lens and you're like, oh my God, that was going on. That was the song we were listening to. Yeah. And I'm so thankful that I have it and that I didn't let the cringe factor stop me from keeping it.
A 10-year time period is crucial to like.
You need time. If I had looked
away from it,
I had looked at that in high school, I would have burned each sheet individually, like some Eliza Hamilton cosplay from Hamilton the musical.
So, Meredith, thank you so much for bringing your expertise on American history because honestly, there's so much of like the Sedition Act and stuff. I'm just like, don't know what that was. So thank you.
No problem.
And where can people follow you? Your podcast, your everything? Just let everybody know.
Yeah, so I co-host a podcast with Amanda Matta of Fact, who is the royal commentator to the stars, essentially. And we have a podcast called Off With Our Headlines, which comes out twice a week, talking about all royals, but really the British royal family and shenanigans in the media. If you want to read my writing, I do have a Substack. It's meredithconstant.substack.com. And you can find me all over social media, TikTok, Instagram, etc., at Meredith Constant, one word.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much
Thank
for this episode.
you.
I was really looking forward to this. Abigail Adams, I didn't know anything about her. Now I know a lot about her. I will ride for her. Thank you.
Yes.
And happy 250th anniversary to your country.
Thanks. I will be Tina Fey eating an entire sheet cake on SNL. That will be me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, fireworks. I don't know what you do.
Yay.
So thanks again to Meredith Constant for joining me for this conversation, and make sure to listen to her podcast, Off With Her Headlines, that she does with fellow friend of this podcast, Amanda Matta. And I wrote a book. Surprise. It's called Rebel of the Regency, the scandal saga of Carolina Brunswick, Britain's queen without a crown. She was a person who lived in parallel to Abigail Adams. I'm pretty sure the two of them never met, but they certainly knew people in common. Both of them really hated Queen Charlotte, so I think the two of them would get along had they met. Anyway, my book, Rebel of the Regency, you can get as a book, as an ebook, as an audiobook, and it's available in all English-speaking countries. It's here in North America. You can get it in Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Ireland. It's available in some European places as well. And if it's not in your local store, you can always order it online. You can get more information about my book and how to order it at rebeloftheregency.com. And next week, oh boy, we have a treat. We're going to be talking about somebody else from American history with a guest who I think you're going to be really excited to hear from. And we will learn about a man from American history who I think can be added to the pantheon of worst ever dudes discussed on this podcast. So you have that to look forward to next week. And also next week, I'm going to have the exciting reveal of our next season's theme here on Vulgar History. So get ready for that. And until next time, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, scripted, and hosted by Anne Foster. Editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. Vulgar History artwork by Karen Moynihan. Social media videos by Magdalena Denson. Transcripts of this podcast are available at vulgarhistory.com by Aveline Malik. You can get early ad-free episodes of Vulgar History by becoming a paid member of our Patreon at patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. Vulgar History merch is available at vulgarhistory.com/store for Americans and vulgarhistory.redbubble.com for everyone else. Follow us on social media at Vulgar History Pod. Get in touch with me at vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com.
Legendary stories, awe-inspiring sound, and endless adventure. Welcome to the realms of peril and glory. Explore the mechanically magical vistas of Vale, the paranormal mysteries of liminal London, and the cyberpunk chaos of Cyborg. Fall in love with our core cast, or be awed by our incredible guests from familiar shows like Oxventure, Three Black Halflings, and No Rolls Barred. Ignite your imagination and discover the realms of peril and glory today. Go to realmspod.com or search Realms of Peril and Glory wherever you listen to podcasts.
The war is over, and both sides lost. Kingdoms were reduced to cinders, and armies scattered like bones in the dust. Now the survivors claw to what's left of a broken world, praying the darkness chooses someone else tonight. But in the Shadow Dark, the darkness always wins. This is old school adventuring at its most cruel. Your torch ticks down in real time, and when that flame dies, something else rises to finish the job. This is a brutal rules-light nightmare with a story that emerges organically based on the decisions that the characters make. This is what it felt like to play RPGs in the 80s, and man, it is so good to be back. Join the Glass Cannon podcast as we plunge into the Shadow Dark every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/theglasscannon, with the podcast version dropping the next day. See what everybody's talking about and join us in the dark.
The world of Sonic the Hedgehog has been thrust into a not-so-dark, not-so-stormy hard-boiled detective story that probably nobody saw coming. Follow Sonic and the intrepid Chaotix Detective Agency as they take on their biggest case yet. This high-flying, action-packed adventure will take them across the world, fighting for every clue they can find. It's one heck of a tale, which is good, because this story might be the only thing that can save their lives.
Well, if that's all, I can just dispose of you.
Wait, what?
All will be revealed in Sonic the Hedgehog presents The Chaotix Case Files. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
When the Chaotix are on the case.